It's such a privilege to get to meet you guys in person. We've worked with our fair share of clients, but to see the people on the other end is really great. And of course, you guys are familiar with a lot of people up here. We did just do the formal introductions, but I personally want to get to know a little bit more about you guys too. You have incredible histories in this industry that everybody has in front of them, so I don't need to repeat that. But this one is a really specific question, and I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Sorry, coming in, guns a-blazing, coming in hot. But it's a fun one. So I want to learn about a specific campaign, one that you've worked on with a client over the years, or one that you saw as maybe a consumer that went, you know what, I really like that one. I really, I took something from that, or that really resonated with me. I think that's kind of, to get the wheels turning, the more fun the better. This is a dynamic industry. Also, this room is way too quiet for how fun I know these people are. So feel free, chime in if you guys have questions. I know we have it reserved for the final 30 minutes. I'm not the expert here. I'm learning from you guys just as much. But hopefully, I just vamped long enough for something to come to mind for you guys. I want to start all the way down at the other end of the table. Jill, you're first. You got that mic. You might have to turn it on.
Hey everybody. So a campaign that we recently worked on was for Connecticut statewide marketing and tourism, the Rage Bake campaign, all about pizza. And so I think that was one of the ones that just came to mind quickly because it involved coming up with a very interesting strategy. How do we get people talking about Connecticut when our budgets had been dramatically reduced? 60% budget cut. How do we keep people talking about Connecticut? How do we do that in a fun way? And so the team came up with this idea of let's get people talking about Connecticut pizza, and a very small, unfortunately, media budget to kick things off with billboards in New York, really taunting New York, like, hey, we have the best pizza, give it up. But then it took off from there, and we ended up, I don't know if you saw lots of this coverage, but we saw everyone from the talk show hosts to celebrities, social media influencers, everybody sort of got in on the conversation, and we really hit it out of the park in terms of number of impressions, etc. But it was very much a team effort with the state, with lots of partners, with social media influencers. We had a big press junket where we got lots of media people there, and so it was just, I think, a new age campaign, lots of different aspects of our business, social media, PR, strategy, paid media, all coming together to deliver really good results. So just one that came to mind.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up?
Yes.
Okay, so a little background on me. I'm fairly new to my current role at NBC Connecticut. Before that, I was up in Springfield, Massachusetts.
Yes.
So if this is ringing a bell for the Connecticut basketball capital of the world, it was a big deal for us because us being my former place, but that was the home of the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
So you are.
It is the home of the Hall of Fame.
It is the home of the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
But I guess now.
Yes, it comes from being bold and brazen, and the governor putting up signs that say, Connecticut's the pizza capital,
Okay,
as
so now
well
I
as
know.
the basketball capital and the submarine capital, and lots of other capitals.
Okay.
So that was a great campaign. I was in New York shortly after it broke, and was in the borough of New York area, and I walked past a sign and took a photo with it, right? When New Yorkers stopped me and said, "What are you doing taking a picture with that fucking sign?" I kind of shrieked away from that, but right now, actually, what I'm really fascinated by are the campaigns that are breaking for the holidays, not just the ones that we're working on, but the ones that are happening across, and the ones that are coming across on social media. Amazon continues to hit it out of the park, the spirit of what they do. And anyone seen the new IKEA commercials? We're absolute minimal and focusing on aspects of that. And how do we feel about AI technology for commercials these days? Mixed feelings about that, shaking hands, etc. I found it really interesting that Coca-Cola came out with an all AI commercial. You guys seen it? Taking credit for the iconic interpretation of Santa Claus. Did they use people in that commercial? No. They used only AI animals as a way to soften the approach and stay away from the controversial of humanity being interpreted by artificial means. So I think right now we're in the most interesting time been doing this work for 40 years, and it's amazing what I'm seeing happening right now, every day. Where'd you next?
I was thinking we could come in, so.
Oh.
My turn.
Absolutely.
Gosh, I don't know if I can narrow it down to one campaign in particular. I've been at it for 23 years at Mason. It's a long time, and I've seen a lot of changes and different clients and different campaigns. But I'll kind of dial back to when we were working with one of the largest credit unions in Connecticut, and it was kind of the perfect storm of the financial collapse of 2008. And so we really leveraged that event to highlight the differences of what a credit union is and why people should join a credit union. And we kicked off the campaign in a really, it was led by PR and guerrilla marketing efforts. So we didn't necessarily first come out with the new brand and the TV spots. It was launched with really grassroots, kind of like mysterious. There were these street decals all throughout New Haven because that was where their largest footprint was. And there were these street decals with a website that just said, whatsupwithbanks.org. And my favorite moment of that was there was a decal on the sidewalk outside of, I think, either First Niagara or one of those banks that someone else here may have worked with, and they were out there with a power washer washing it off. Right? Yeah, and so, and then when you went from that website to, you clicked on that link and went to that website, and you found out all the information about why credit unions are so much better than banking, right, traditional banking. So it was, what I liked about that campaign was it tapped into truth. And I think that's what's at the heart of what everyone here does, is you have to find that kernel of truth. And how do you interpret it? You can just be straightforward with that truth, or you can get really creative and crazy with it. And so for a credit union, they leaned on a little bit more of the crazy side. They liked big, bold ideas. And so that was a fun one. I like that.
Hello. So great, I was so inspired by what Jill was talking about. For me, work that I am particularly proud of, not only for myself and for Cronin, but for the whole state of Connecticut, is the strategic foundational work that we did. And the state of Connecticut came to us and gave us the opportunity to help them develop a brand. What does Connecticut stand for? Previously, most folks thought it was just that dot, that little weirdly shaped state between Boston and New York, not really known for anything. It's just a place you drive through on 84 when you're going to the big cities. So we really dug deep into what it is that makes Connecticut so special, and what we landed on was that this really is a state of makers. By that we mean, we make submarines. We make legendary, future iconic basketball players. We make aerospace, tools, products, ingredients that help fuel, our nation's defense. And then, of course, there's pizza that we make too, that we're pretty good at. But from there, we developed a strategy and a real platform for our state that could extend into creative campaigns. We brought that to life in celebrating the state of Connecticut, got a lot of attention. I'm especially proud that our idea was able to be extended, not only by Cronin, but by our partner agencies like Adams and Knight. And so I'm very happy to hear that it resonates not only in Connecticut, but also in New York City.
It's really gratifying to have agencies around me that worked on all this Connecticut stuff, because I'm a huge proponent of our state and our region, and so I'm glad that our brand is in good hands. But Jill, I was furious when you guys came out with that campaign. I loved it, brilliant. No, I'm a huge UConn basketball fan, and a hugely superstitious basketball fan. And you come out and say we're the home, basketball capital. You can't do that. You can't do that. So I was so nervous, I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna come back and bite us. But then the women won the national championship and the men are gonna win it this year, so. I think it's all. Yeah. So, I would talk about a campaign, and it's not even a campaign, but maybe 20 or so years ago. I wrote a line for a hospital, and for Gaylord Hospital, if anyone's familiar with it. And it was, I don't even remember what the piece was, maybe a direct mail piece or a letter or something, but I wrote this line, very simple, think possible. And fast forward 20 years later, it's on a banner when you walk in, it's painted on their walls, it's on a wooden plaque that they give to every patient that leaves that place. It's their tagline to this day. And maybe most gratifying, we did a video with them when we were interviewing patients a year or two ago. And we started talking about that. And the key to the recovery was like, we had to think possible, think positive. So, listen, it doesn't happen all the time when you create campaigns, but what an amazing experience for an agency, for creative people, to see their work have so much meaning and to do so much good in the world. Right?
It's a great legacy.
And when people, I always tell my staff, you're not just making ads, right? When people ask you what you do, changing lives. Your work has incredible meaning sometimes. And even the campaigns you talk about affects people's lives, and it's really very powerful stuff.
Okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't tap in. Obviously, we've talked about experience, campaigns that really resonated with you guys. You guys have built your teams in different ways, different careers. When you're building those teams, what are things that you see in your colleagues around you, people that you're hiring, talent that really elevates and drives somebody to be successful in this world? Who would like to start? Characteristics in talent that you're hiring when you are building these teams?
Really what I love to see and what I'm very fortunate and blessed to have with my 3 colleagues who joined me today, just as examples. It sounds trite, but it's so true. You want people who say we, not I. So for me, what really makes a successful teammate, colleague, leader, is someone who encourages everyone around them to be successful. So give them space, opportunity, and support to do their very best, then nudge them a little, and they'll reach a new level of best. So many people who I work with, I've seen them come along over the years, and not only have they grown into people who I admire and who now teach me, but they've brought along everyone else who comes into contact with them, who has the good fortune to work alongside them. So at Cronin, we see a lot of that. We have great longevity and tenure with our people, and I think a big part is that we all support and train and coach and be there for each other. And what I've found over the years is that you can kind of suss that out pretty quick in an interview after you've been doing it for a while.
I'm gonna tap into that really quick. What's a great question that leads out?
It comes out pretty quick when you talk to people about what it is that they've done, that they're most proud of, what are their achievements. When you start to hear we versus I did, that tells you pretty quick.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to rip on something that you said, I think, talent obviously is sort of, you have to have that to get in the door, but we look for coachability. And back to basketball, I love how Gino Auriemma always says that what he looks for most in players is coachability. The talent has to be there, but they're never going to be great. They're never going to make others around them great unless they're humble, willing to listen, and willing to improve. And so I think at whatever level that we hire, we're looking for those people who want to learn from others and who are good listeners. I think in our business, too few people are really good listeners and want to absorb and ask that next follow-up question and dive deeper and get into it. Willing to take feedback, willing to take that feedback and not only make themselves better, but make the ideas better, make the agency better, make the client more successful. So I think coachability is a very underlooked qualification and certainly one that really matters to us.
Oh, well, It was more so like when you are interviewing individuals, you could weed out the I versus we people. What's a good question or a good thing to keep an eye out for when?
I always ask people, what was your biggest screw up? And what did you, I don't really say that, I say something different, but I say, what's your biggest screw up and what did you do afterwards? And to me, that's always fascinating because people who say, oh, I'm really, I don't make mistakes, I really try very hard. It's like, oh, we all do. What did you learn from that? How did you not do that again? That's the humility and the willingness to learn that I look for.
Yeah. Did all of us just think about what was our biggest screw up? I'm gonna use the word screw up because I was like, what's my biggest screw up?
It's amazing how many people try to say, I can't really think of anything. Like, wow, I can't stop thinking of things.
You may not have done your best screw up yet. At Miranda Creative, we have a simple phrase. We say, think like an owner. We look to encourage the entire culture of our community, thinking like an owner. And we don't necessarily ask a question in the interview. I listen for when a candidate is saying to me, what's next for me after this job? What will be my opportunities for growth within your organization? Where is your company going and how can I be a part of that? I see in that behavior already an individual who is thinking like that.
I was just going to say at Mason, one of our ethos or tagline is challenge accepted. So we look for people who aren't afraid to take on either the most complicated challenges out there, like, look at all the industries we work in, right? Healthcare, manufacturing, tourism, all the, complicated energy, right? The business of energy, complicated industry. So we look for people who are not afraid to take on a challenge, no matter how big or small it is. And everything these folks up here have said, we is a big word, you can see through it right away. When someone just talks all about themselves, okay, you're here, we get it, we've seen your resume, but we want to learn from you. And one of my questions too is, I phrase it a little differently, is tell me about your favorite failure and what you learned from it. Or what are you not good at?
I like the favorite failure. I can answer more from a creative standpoint, the creative people that we bring on. Because they're artists, it's very easy to look at their talent and say, wow, this person's an amazing artist. But I think there's an element that is important to us is in its intelligence, and maybe not intelligence, but capacity for knowledge. When we think about ideation, it's not conjuring something out of midair, right? Ideation is about connections. So I'm making connections of things that are out there in the world, whether it's music or poetry or politics or news or pop culture or history, or So the capacity for someone to understand all of these different things, it's like almost like collaging. It's like being able to take all these little pieces, come out and put them together to create something really beautiful. It doesn't just take talent and skill, it takes the capacity for knowledge. So we have conversations with people about pop culture and about, like Maria was saying, just talking about ads, talking about what's going on in the news and get a sense for people's understanding of what's going on in the world. Essentially, every ad that we make, it's a connection to all these different things out there.
Okay, so you just mentioned a lot of things going on in the world, no doubt about it. So let's talk about how businesses are kind of navigating that. You guys are obviously working with major clients, whether it be, a smaller, not necessarily smaller business, local business, but maybe it's an independent business, or we're working with a state, or, an agency like that. What's a priority to them when navigating a world where there are lots of, touchy places right now? What's a priority? What's important to them since you guys work with them on a daily basis? That was that type of a question.
Yeah, it depends on the client, right, and the type of business that they're in. So I'll give you an example. We work with manufacturing client, right, that has a campaign going on right now called Rooted in America. and it's all about their, legacy here in the United States and expanding their footprint and doing more business here in the US, even though they're global. But the challenge with that is how do you tiptoe around the current administration, right? If you're doing business overseas, or if your customers are going to be paying more tariffs, right, or higher tariffs. So I think it comes down to having those honest conversations with your clients and talk about what the messaging is, and what is your position. And sometimes you can push them, right, to say, okay, we have immediate inquiry on something, and they're asking about this, can we talk about it, and what can we say, or how should we say this, so we can be viewed as a leader. So I think it's a combination of one, being aware of what's going on in the world, and two, being aware and clued in as to what your client's position is on that, and finding either middle ground or putting the stake in the ground.
Thanks for the opportunity to think about this for a moment. Because you're right, it's really, there's so many variables in there. I'm asking myself, what is the one universal umbrella? And I think all of our clients are asking us if they're making the right decisions on what that might be, the right decision on the spending of their media, the right decisions on hiring, the right decisions on positioning their brand. They're asking us to help them understand if they're making the right decisions and where that knowledge comes from, and how they're able to present it to their teams or to their leadership communities. It's consistently about that for me. How about for you guys?
Yeah, I totally agree. The through line for every client we deal with is that they're not, whatever their industry or company or size, whatever, is that they're people. And, we always try to look at it as we do not help brands. We help people help brands. So when you look at it that way, the people you're dealing with, your clients, have the same challenges you have. Feeling valued at work, doing something meaningful, having people listen to you, getting the kids picked up from school and all those things. And I think when you look at it that way, from a service standpoint, you can service the hell out of your clients, form some really amazing relationships when you understand that you're dealing with people, not companies, not brands.
I think sometimes we forget the humanity of it all, right? At the end of the day, that's how you make that impact when you're thinking about this humanity on the other side of whatever campaign it may be, or whatever we're talking about that day.
Absolutely.
And just, to kind of pivot, while we talked about topically, unless, of course, Mike's still looking at okay. Topically, also platform. Selfishly, I'm in television. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. We know people aren't watching TV in the rate that they used to, and the ages are changing when we're doing it. How important is it, and I'm sure this is probably a selfish question on my part, but TV has a place in this world, but what does that look like? And, are there conversations about other platforms, and how do we have those honestly with brands if they might not be open-minded to it?
For me, that ultimately the creative mix of moving images, sounds, words, you can't beat it that I know of to tell the full brand story. So I'm someone in my teams, by and large agree. Gosh, if you can have TV, please do. There's been so many different channels, platforms over the past few years, in the past 20 years really, that have been sort of hot topics. But what we found is to really have that emotion, to make a connection and tell a real story that is compelling, putting TV in the buy.
I am not paying her to say this. It's really clear. That's a better answer than I thought I was going to get.
Yeah, no, I think we live in such an age of a diversification of media outlets, and so I think this question, like, what's the best, or is that it really depends on who's the audience and how do they engage with those different outlets, and so it's usually a crazy myriad mix of channels that is the best way to reach any audience. That said, there is something about the prestige of TV. They were on TV, they were an ad on the Super Bowl, there's still a reason why people pay a lot of money for that. Or, I saw something on TV and then it gets commented on in social media ad nauseum, and then, so there's definitely an opportunity to continue to think about what role does TV play in the media mix, in the brand building potential of TV, and how do we make the most of that? I applaud TV in general for thinking about, okay, and then how do we leverage what we do in other ways? How do we also engage on other platforms? And I just think that's the world we live in. We have to think about all of those different platforms and how do they work together to help us engage the right audiences at the right time, with the right messages in the right context.
Do you have a follow-up? We're done, okay. So that being said, we can't ignore social media. Like, it's massive. It is, how we're channeling the attention of that next generation. How has it created a new voice in the media marketplace, and what is the value of that?
So that's a very interesting transition from the two media choices. And I don't think they're in dichotomies. I think they can relate to each other. I think that what we're all exploring right now a great deal, including everybody here in the audience, is the relationship to content creators, previously known as influencers, and their space and how it relates often to personalities within your networks as well. They themselves are content creators in that space. I think we're going to see very similar materials spread across all of the medias on a repeat pattern to the brand awareness. And the choice of media is really based on the choice of the actions. I think there's a rapid aspect of conversion that happens in social media, while the TV broadcast may be more about the brand as a whole. Social media conversion.
Yeah, one of the things we say at Mason too is that the media landscape is more fragmented today than it's ever been, right? And I think one of the interesting things is, maybe a quick poll. Where do you hear about a breaking news story first? It's what? Social, right? Probably. You get something on your cell phone, right? And that happens, but it could be an NBC.
Not to interrupt you, do you mind if we do a quick poll?
Yeah.
Let's do it, okay. For my answer, push notifications, NBC Connecticut. I'm a company girl, so sorry. NBC Connecticut is where I hear most of mine. So anybody else, push notifications on your cell phone? Oh, that's a lot. Okay, that's
You have to be sending the right thing to the right audience on the right platform. It used to be, I think one of the challenges a lot of agencies face when a new medium comes along, like, how do we put this into the mix, and how do we not take the same headline from a billboard or the same content from a TV spot and just shove it into social media? It has to be different, because the people engaging on that particular platform, maybe TikTok, are engaging and watching it a different way than they are watching like a 30 or 15 on TV. So
You got 5 seconds, right? That's the rule, 5 seconds.
if
You
that
can't
happens,
do it, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so it's always interesting to see how we can kind of tell the same story just on different platforms. Eric, do you?
I'm more of a print guy, so.
Like unicorn.
do that.
Listen, I'll be completely honest with you. Social's it's, some people say, well, it's just like a new medium, just like TV was, just like digital ads were, but it's not. It's bigger, it's revolutionary. And I think we do a fair job of it, but we haven't figured it out yet. And when we do, it will change the next day. So I think if anyone out there struggling with it, you're not alone. And it's really tough for a creative person like myself, who is more traditional, to adapt to it, to adapt to the very idea that, hell, just get it out there, it doesn't matter, it's going to be gone tomorrow, you know what I mean? And there's something that's hard for me to adapt to the fact that my son's YouTube channel will get more hits than this ad that I make tomorrow. But it's peace of mind for you guys. It's scary for professionals out here.
I don't think anybody has it figured out. Nobody. Even people that have been in the space for a decade plus, doing it well, engaging well, nobody has it really figured out. And they're just throwing that stuff up there, saying a prayer, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. YouTube is in a whole other beast, which is, a lot of people are starting that conversation. You brought up creative, and I think social media lends itself, obviously, if you push that boundary of being creative. We have really great creative people here. How are you creative but still credible? I think there's a really fine line as far as, how do you create engaging content that has people stopping what they're doing, looking at the TV screen, the phone screen, whatever, but also still not, for lack of a better word, being kind of a joke. You know what I mean? Is there a way?
I think you're rooted in the core idea, right? So there's a couple types of social content out there. A lot of it is a joke. A lot of it's a reach to try to get eyes, and then there's stuff that brands are doing that's strong, based on strong ideas, strong storytelling, meaningful work that's done in this new medium. And I think that's what you got to do. That's what we do. That's what we should be striving to do.
I think Basketball Hall of Fame or Basketball Cavoli is still creative and credible. That's kind of sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing too. Using like SNL as an example, right? How many people actually stay up till 11:30 on a Saturday night and watch SNL? Nobody. People's behavior, right? But people's behavior has changed, and so we have to be clued into that. And what SNL has done a great job of is to show all their skits. Everything's on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram Reels. And by the way, those are getting bigger and larger views than the actual number of people tuning in, right? They might tell 5 million people tuned in. You go and look on YouTube, there's 62.5 million views, right? So it's changing with consumer behavior. I think that's one of the secret sauces to figuring it out.
I think we talk about social media, but social media is many different platforms. And I think the challenge for creatives, and I think we have a couple of ours here today, I think we have to really balance the brand's personality and the platform's personality. And how do you find the right mix of those in every platform? So it's not only going to create one campaign for social and then put it on all platforms. If you're really going to be on LinkedIn and Instagram, and TikTok, you have to think differently about both of those things, the brand's personality, what's true to them, and not just what's going to get people to stop scrolling, but also what is right for the platform. And so how do you be true to both of those is the challenge.
Well said. I think ultimately creativity will win. I think, sometimes we'll witness a new creative spirit come across in various forms of media. We may not immediately get what they're trying to achieve, but given time, how often have we witnessed a person's voice or perspective become something that everybody engages in because they were true to their creativity, they were true to that passion. I think that's what will bridge the space between creativity and credibility, if it's authentic.
And just one more thing, sorry. Social, though, Jill touched on it, is so many different things. It can be content, right? And everybody talks about organic content and creating that content, or followers can see and engage in, and 90% of the time it's boring and nobody wants to see it. So yes, creativity is a big plus there. But it's also an advertising medium now, right? In the good old days, Facebook was just about, connecting with people and seeing what everybody was having for dinner, or getting a message out there and everybody saw it. Now, you have to pay for people to see it. So it's a combination of organic, it's that combination of it being an advertising platform, and it's also a great communication tool, especially during a crisis. Social can be like one of the first places you can start to communicate with people and keep them informed.
I'm beginning to wonder if the term organic content is going to be an oxymoron when it closes next year. I mean, what isn't planned anymore? What isn't organized in some way? What is truly organic?
There we go. I love that. This is great. While we're talking about creative and building these ideas and working with brands for new campaigns, I would be a liar if I said my brain didn't dry up. Like, there are times we've all hit that wall, like, I got nothing. What does a brainstorm session look like with your team? How do you create innovative campaigns and bring that to the table and pitch somebody and hopefully it works out?
I'm looking at some of my guys out there.
You tell happy to do that. We have tried very hard to kind of think about this as an inverted triangle process. So really putting together a good brief that says, why are we doing this? What do we need to accomplish? And who do we need to reach to accomplish those goals? But then bringing together at the inversion of this pyramid. So all the different specialists. You know, you bring in strategy and research and creative and PR and social and tech, and you say, okay, this is the challenge, what do we need to accomplish? And then you listen. You listen to, you know, what everybody has to say, and then you riff off each other, and we call it creating shallow holes. So we'll put up on the, you know, we have an idea lab, we'll put up shallow holes, like seems like a promising territory. And then you'll decide which ones of those we want to dig deeper in, and then as we dig deeper, then fewer people get involved in the process. So rather than starting at the top where a few people come up with the idea and then you involve everybody in terms of the execution, we do it the other way. Involve everybody in the idea generation, and then as you hone the idea, then bring in the specialists that are going to help to, you know, execute that and focus on that particular idea. So we love our shallow holes. We love putting up a bunch of stuff on the wall. We love to get our clients involved earlier in that process, where they're looking at, in the old days we would call them tissues, but now we put, you know, we put up things on the wall, and they love to come in and brainstorm with you. You know, so much of the time, like, they think agencies go off and it's this black box, how do you do what you do? We love to involve them, and they're going to help shape those ideas in a much quicker and much better way than we could on our own. And I think that's what helps us get to better ideas faster.
Where did shallow holes come from for you? Because I've been using that for years. I thought I invented it.
We adopted it. We adopted it. It's not our language, but you know, that's how we call those. Sorry, that's how we call those things. So yeah, you dig shallow holes too.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you guys remember Greg Edwards, who used to be a big copywriter in this market. He introduced that term. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and you dig deeper. I think that's process we talked about is awesome. One of the things at the beginning of that process is, you know, I would say that fewer great ideas have come out of our agency that have been stuck inside someone's head and haven't come out. Meaning, we haven't tapped most of the ideas that are in our building. And so my biggest goal with my team is to get those ideas out in any way possible. So our process is about involving as many people as possible and getting people to talk, getting people to share ideas no matter what they are. And so we develop processes and procedures to make that happen. I'll tell you one quick one, and we haven't done it recently, is especially if you start to stagnate and people start to self-edit themselves and don't say anything, we do this thing called a storm of silliness, and we say, 10 minutes, come up with as many ideas as you can, the first thing off the top of your head, the craziest idea you can think of, I don't care what it is. And the ideas typically are appropriate, often are, you know, not suitable for work, but the ideas, you got to brainstorm. You got people coming up with ideas. And actually, every once in a while, there's something that was written on the wall that seems to make no sense, but you actually riff on it, it becomes a shallow hole, and you can make something really special out of it. So.
I really like what Jill said about bringing clients involved all along the way. I'm also reminded that I still talk about tissue sessions, and increasingly neither my colleagues nor my clients know what I'm talking about. So I think that just says probably everyone around me seems to be getting younger. I'm staying the same. But in terms of bringing along clients, more and more I feel that's so essential and beneficial and meaningful. This will probably sound crazy and possibly offensive to my creative friends in the room, but I never like to do a big ta-da with a creative presentation. I don't want clients to be shocked or even surprised by the work that we share. I want them to be delighted and challenged and intrigued, and I want them to have questions and to be leaning in, but you know, they shouldn't be surprised and certainly not shocked, because if you've been working with them every step of the way, like Jill described, bringing them into the process early and often, what are their ideas, run things by them, think ultimately it just makes for not only stronger work that's more rooted in truth and in keeping with the brand that you're working on behalf of, it certainly leads to better presentations.
This is such a joy to hear the experiences in other spaces. I think the only thing I can really add to the conversation is that we talk about how the time to meet a good idea is not at that moment, but it should be a muscle that you're exercising all the time versus waiting for the moment that you call about. So we do regular aspects, we call them creative sessions, creative sesh. We come together, we share examples of what other people are doing so that when it comes to time to sit down and present or create ideas together, we're already aligned, we already have some familiar work and things that we're sharing already. I also find the amount of time that we're together is less than it should be. You guys have similar experiences, and therefore that when you do have that time together, you want to make sure you're ready for that as much as possible. In our hybrid world, we're not actually in the office every day, 5 days a week. Anybody here in the office every day, 5 days a week? No, I think it's important to talk about that. I don't think we are. There's no such thing as us. And I think that is impacting our creative process. And we have to find new ways to work around it to still do our best work.
You touched on something like, because a lot of us are remote, right? How many people are like hybrid? Yeah, I mean, we do go in once in a while. At least I go in once in a while, not as often as I should. But that was a challenge, right? How do you like collaborate virtually, right? And I think maybe we figured it out. I don't know, the jury's still out there, but we seem to be doing okay at it. But I love the conversation about involving the client from the get-go, right? We were just newly engaging with a new client. Started back in April, and university has, reputational issues and legacy issues, and they wanted what started as kind of PR project to talk about, we need help, combating these bad issues or problems we've had, and the conversation turned to say, well, what are the positives? Tell us about the good things happening here. And that became the strategy, to tell the story about all of the great things happening here, whether it's student outcomes, alumni success and stories, and by the way, your faculty and the institution itself. And that then led to a new campaign that just wrapped up and will be airing next week. But it all leans in on that truth of the great things that organization is doing. And it was actually quite simple, when we were doing the brief and having some conversations and brainstorming about it, it just all kept going back to that truth.
There's some productivity in the positivity, and just looking forward to something.
And listening to the client, just listening.
Just listening. We love that. Okay, so all of you, obviously, management roles. Let's talk about, a particular standout management decision that you've made that really propelled you guys in the industry recently. Is there one that comes to mind? This is your chance to brag, guys.
It's interesting. I think every hire that we make is the most important decision that we make. And so I won't say any standout hires recently, but I think that it is so important that the business that we're in, everybody that you bring into your organization really expands your capabilities and those ideas that you're going to generate in ways that you can't even imagine. So every hire is so critical. And whenever we survey employees, like I'm sure many of you do, what's always weighs on my shoulders is that people say the best thing about working with us is being surrounded by smart, talented professionals who are also good people. And so I think that's the responsibility that we have, to make sure that we are bringing those smart, talented, good people into the mix. And so I feel like every one of those decisions propels us. And everyone that we don't hire that we should have hired puts us back. And everyone that, we hire that maybe shouldn't have been hired, that eventually usually the group manages them out, is the challenge. But the most important thing is bringing in the right people.
I interviewed you 30 years ago.
Were you talking about him just then? I can mediate.
You personally, but Cronin.
Yeah.
So for an internship, obviously.
Right. That's it.
It comes down to people, right? I think it no matter what, when you're going in to pitch a new piece of business, most agencies can pretty much do the same thing, right? And we all have our little differences, and some do it better than others, and whatever. But it comes down to the people. So surrounding yourself with great people and hiring great people is yes. I also think that another follow-up answer to that is, as an agency or a business, being open to new ideas. Not to go back to the social media talk, but I think back in like 2007, agencies were all scratching their heads saying, what is this, and what do we do with it? And how do we make money from it? How does it fold it into our services? Right? So it's being open to new possibilities, and the conversation we're having today is, the elephant again in the room, AI. Right? Everybody's like, pontificating about AI and everything, and our position is, if you're worried about AI taking your job, embrace it so it makes you a better PR person or a better copywriter or a better brainstormer, whatever it is. If you're not embracing it, my position on it is I think you're going to be left behind. But I do think the human makes the machine better, not the other way around.
For me, the best management decisions, most significant and most meaningful have always been about the people. So as we've been talking about hiring the right people and how important that is, for me, it's also about championing them and how you support them. I certainly make more than my share of mistakes, and there's a lot of things that I, have to deliberate on, and calls that I make that are just not the right calls. But the one thing that I can always be sure of is that if you are championing your people, giving them the opportunity to be great, because if you've hired the right people, you've hired someone who's smarter and more naturally gifted than you from the get-go, which is definitely true in my case. But if you're championing them to move into management and have their own success, then I think everything else works out okay.
I agree. I think I'd have to say there were two significant decisions that we made in this planning year for ourselves. One was the ability to do what's called job crafting, where we were paying attention to the talents that our team members had and looking at crafting a position that worked best for what we saw for skill sets that they were developing and skill sets where they were interested in. And the second thing, I hope this resonates for all of you, is we realized we didn't have to do it alone. And we looked for outsourced partners for areas of expertise where we felt that we were struggling. We found a brilliant AI bridge consultant for us to help us understand what we should be adopting in our agency. And also, talking about our people, we found some great talent helping us with benefits and understanding what our team members wanted for their benefit programs. And again, we don't need to be in a room sitting around a table trying to make all the decisions ourselves. Be open to say, we don't have the answers, maybe somebody else does, and where can we find them? Those were our two big decisions this past year.
I mean, the saying, never be the smartest, is it the smartest person in the room? Is that surround yourself with people that are smarter than you or something? I don't know. It's a miracle I get paid to talk for a living. I'll be the first one to say it. But it's true, basically, with all of what you're saying. I want to wrap up this portion with looking towards the future. And I don't want this to have a negative connotation to it, because there will be challenges in the future. We kind of just brought up one. We'll call AI a challenge. Sometimes it can be a tool. Why not embrace it and use it as a tool? What's a challenge that you see on the horizon for your position or just the industry in general that you guys are maybe looking forward to?
You know, off the top of my head, we're finding that those, sexy RFPs are fewer and far between now. It's so different from when I started out in this industry, when you would get an RFP and a steady stream of them, and they were always huge. Working with a search consultant, and frankly, we're not seeing that so much anymore, and I don't think we're alone in that. I mean, my God, now reputable brands are posting RFPs on LinkedIn, which still just blows my mind, but I guess that happens. In addition to so many companies bringing marketing in-house or wanting to work with, more variety of agency partners, budget cuts, CMO turnover, it's almost like, why on earth would you get into this business? Because it's so freaking hard, and it's just getting harder to have that consistency, or as my boss would say, consistent recurring revenue. It's a wild roller coaster. That isn't going to change. It will get even wilder. But I think most of us are pretty crazy. That's why we got into this. So if you like crazy and you like wild, we'll see what the future brings.
Yeah, I think all of that, like RFPs becoming fewer and far between. Also, just budgets. I think there's a demand to do things for less money and faster. And it's sometimes crazy. Sure, we've all been in the position where we need to turn something around really quick, but I think it's nuts when a client comes to you and says, we want to launch a new brand campaign and it has to go live in 6 weeks or 4. That would be a luxury, actually. But you know what I'm saying? Like doing more with less. So, and I think it's a reality, and sometimes that's, indicative of economic indicators or what have you, what's going on in the world. People are getting, people are getting tighter with their budgets, more lean, and are bringing services in-house sometimes, and seeing things that you used to work on just go away. So I think that's a challenge that's on the horizon.
I am usually not the glass half full person on the table, but I'm actually really excited about the future for our business. I think it's going to require us all to really rethink what is our value. How do we define our role in this universe where, yes, people are bringing things in-house, they're using multiple freelancers, they're saying, oh, we need to give everything to content creators and let them define our brand. So yes, there are all those challenges, but what I see, especially for small, mid-sized, independent agencies, I see that there is a clamoring for what we can bring to the table. They, especially mid-sized accounts, they don't have the internal staff to manage an army of different freelancers. And they really want guidance. So I think if we as an industry can find a way to redefine our value, we're not a business consultant, we can actually come up with the ideas and execute them. We're not a freelancer that's going to do one thing, we're going to be able to bring together a program, connect the dots, drive the results that you're looking for. I think if we can find sharper ways to define our value in this marketplace, I think there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of frustration we hear with holding companies who have bought up agencies, and now, especially our mid-sized CMOs are saying, I'm getting the junior team, I'm paying a lot more, I'm getting a lot less. So if we can redefine our value, I really feel like the future is really bright for agencies our size, your size, and the work that we can do.
You guys didn't hear that. Elizabeth said she liked what Jill said better. I don't see that in you, Jill. I don't see that in you. Yeah. Jill's describing herself as glass half empty. I've never seen that in you.
Glass is definitely half empty over here. We need to protect, I think, the most important thing, which is humanity. And I don't just speaking about AI, which obviously is one of the greatest threats to it, but how many of you have emailed or Slacked the person in the office next to you? what are we doing? You know? When everyone raised their hand about, being hybrid, no one in my company did. And there's a reason for that or not. It's not the best way to do an agency, but it's a way that we believe in. Because we believe in people together and yelling over to the next office, Justin, come check this out. I just came up with this idea in the moment and I need you to see it right now, And there's some humanity in how we work, there's humanity in how we deal with our clients, there's humanity in how we treat each other. We need to protect that. And the great thing about it is, as Jill said, that's the thing that other people can't do. That's what we have. We bring humanity to the work. And no one else can do that but us. So we have to protect it.
It's for that very reason I'm absolutely not afraid, right? Those of you who didn't read my background, I began my company in the third bedroom of an apartment I was renting from my parents in Norwich, Connecticut. Yeah, right? And I think having that background and everything that we have experienced, not just me, everything we have experienced, we have absolutely no reason to be afraid because we can think. We are sharp. And we can come up with new ideas and new directives in ways that other people cannot. So bring it on. Bring it on. I can't wait to see what the next year brings.
That's a bow. I think you just put a bow on my portion. I am no longer needed. We are going to open the floor for you guys. I hope you've been kind of collecting. Oh, thank you very much. I'm going to stay quiet because it is your turn now.
So, jumping around a little bit, but the idea of results from agencies for their clients. I've been a client for 26 years. One thing that I always question is the value, and it seems like I shouldn't, but the value of impressions, for example, right? If I have a piece of content that gets 150,000 views, I might be extremely happy with that if it's the right people. I don't need 900,000 views. So I guess my point is, it's always a challenge to prove your worth to clients and KPIs and reporting and all of that. Talk a little bit about impressions.
I'll try to answer the question, but there's a saying, measure what matters. And that has to be defined up front when planning with the client. If the goal is, to sell more widgets, that's what you measure and that's what matters. I think if it's to fill more hotel rooms or whatever that final goal is, you have to build that measurement or those KPIs in upfront. Now, impressions, there are times, right, when how do you measure the success of, for example, we work in healthcare a lot. Are we going to measure the number of patients that walk through the door? Maybe, but you can do things like aided awareness studies and stuff like that. So impressions do become important then, because the more people seeing something, the more your message may resonate, and that matters. But I think just measuring impressions alone is a very antiquated and dated way of doing things.
I also think that sometimes you need to clarify with clients their expectations about the work that we do, right? And that needs to be done upfront as well. When I have a conversation with the client, George, I go through 4 squares with them. Is the timeline realistic? Is the budget realistic? Is the talent that they're seeking realistic? And do the decision makers is at the table or not? If you can get through by 2 of those things, but more than that, you cannot get to an effective relationship. So the impressions won't be the issue. The issue will be, did you clarify those things right from the very beginning?
And I just wanted to add, I went to the AI workshop that was given by Media Now Interactive. And Aaron did an incredible job. And one thing he said is, people now expect us to use AI, but they want it to be sincere. So it does need that human aspect. So people aren't feeling like they're just being fed something. And I thought it was a very good workshop, by the way. I'm sure those felt the same way. Any other questions?
What is something in your marketing toolkit that has remained constant throughout your time, and what is something that you've changed out or swapped or something?
I think ideas are the constant, right? You know, no matter what, it's understanding who the audience is, what's the goal, what are we trying to get them to do or think or believe, and then what is the idea that is going to shape a campaign or an effort to get them to do that. So ideas are the constant. How you execute those ideas, what technologies you use to execute them, how you distribute them, those are constantly evolving. But it always comes down to understanding the audience, understanding the message, and understanding the desired result. And that I don't think will ever change.
My question though is more digital in that what generally, using AI, when we talk about AI, it's the only one. But now there's a phenomenon called zero-click searches. So you go on to ChatGPT and they say, I need to know somebody who has this particular thing. And Chat calls up all the information, shows you the links if you want them, but here's the phone number. And effectively, from what I've read, holistically speaking, web traffic is down a lot of impressions because of this particular phenomenon. Has there been an idea to ameliorate that?
We're actually doing a lot of work to say, okay, what are those results being driven by, and how do we enter those conversations? And so if you look at it, it is a lot about public relations and referrals, like you're being talked about positively in other ways, on other sites and other media. So it's actually elevated the importance of PR for us to say, you know, and content, because if you Google what to do in Connecticut, and you ask ChatGPT, you're going to get Connecticut. You're going to get lots of references to the PR that the state does, as well as CT Visit articles. So it's about content and PR. So it's just embracing that. Okay, that's a new way people are finding information. How do we help our clients rank higher in those zero-click searches? And so it's really elevated a couple of areas of our practice to be able to adapt to the new reality.
We'll add that Google search traffic, right? Like we sent on some forays or some webinar in this, and it's down 50%, Google search. But AI, ChatGPT, Perplexity, whatever you're using, is not making these answers up out of thin air. So to Jill's point, it's got the weight of third-party credibility, like PR, you'll notice rises to the top of that. So it's interesting because that theory of the dead internet, right? I think we're kind of there with Google, because I can't find what I'm looking for half the time if I'm doing a Google search. But if I want to know something quick and get some relevant links to it, ChatGPT will do a hell of a lot better job and get me smarter on something quicker. But I always verify it because it's not always perfect.
Thanks. I think there's your core questions. What are some things we're seeing evolving as a relationship to that? And I'm not sure if everyone else has noticed it, but there's been an evolution within Google search results. It now stops at 10 as a result of the AI overtaking that process. And that's one, and that is amazing if I ever repeat that Google changed their behavior and their search results as a result of their concerns with AI search decisions. And I think that because what they found is by offering more information, it was educating the language models based on their search results. And I think we're soon going to see, if it's not already out and I missed it, the ranking of artificial intelligence optimization searches as a value that content can deliver. I have yet to find a tool that's offering that, but I'm sure it will be here soon, where you'll be able to say, when someone said what to do in Connecticut versus what to do in Rhode Island, they made Connecticut sound more enjoyable. And that's what we're going to start seeing those results happen, and some data on that. My prediction for 2026.
Hi. Sure. I have a question from the sales side of the room, but not the creative side. For the last 5 years, first of all, thank you for liking TV. It's good to hear. But I would say in the last 5 years, it has more difficult to break down that barrier and have a discussion with anybody at some of the agencies. Not necessarily yours, but then, what would your advice be to those of us in the room that are in media sales to get an email back, get a phone call back, have a meeting with someone at your agency, and what advice would you give?
I would just say innovation, right? So bringing new ideas to us that we haven't thought of before. And that would get our attention.
Yeah, it's exactly that. Once upon a time, I worked on a particular food brand, and the regional director of that food brand would have media day and rotate in all the sales teams, and he would sit at the head of the table and say, I'm spending $1.5 million the first 6 months with WTH. What do you got? Besides getting airtime, what else can you do for me? How can we get value add? How can we do things a little bit more creatively? So that.
Thank you for the question too. Makes me think about what we, how well we're treating our media partners, and that we always think that all of our vendors and our partners are incredibly important to us. I would say it's just the same advice that I would give other agencies, how you're going to get a client's attention. Start by asking, what problem are you trying to solve? Rather than telling us what you can do, because you need to relate that to the problem that we're facing. What are the problems or the challenges or the opportunities that your clients have? Listen carefully and then come back and position. Because while I love new technologies and all of that, I really want to know how those are going to matter. What are they going to do for us? And so ask more questions, understand the business better of ours and the clients, and then come back with really tailoring that solution to how it's going to solve that problem. And maybe that's something you already do, I'm not saying that, but yeah.
What would you find helpful? Would you like to do a media day sponsored by the Ad Club where everybody came in and presented? What would you find helpful? I'm asking you with the yellow badge. Yeah.
Sorry, 1 second.
Might not be. But I think we all struggle with efficiencies. For for every one media who's trying to reach us, there are probably 10 people doing the same thing. So I'm wondering if there's an efficiency in how we can work together on this. What would work for you?
I think you're right. Maybe a media day would help, where we could all present our strengths.
Right, like around, right?
Just go around,
Yeah.
present the strengths.
What you've got, what's new for 2026? What are our
Exactly.
strengths? Right?
Get people together and present what our strengths are and what has changed over the past year, 2 years. That would help. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I would love to get that information the greatest efficiency possible. I'd love if you have it. If you could have one afternoon presenting to 25, 30 different people, would that be better for you?
That would be great. Sometimes it's hard to, you have an idea. It's hard to get it to the proper person at the agency. It's hard to get that response because you guys are busy, just as we're busy.
Yeah.
So that's a great idea.
Versus 30 one-hour conversations across the state, one conversation with 30.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I've worked with almost all of you as a client, so I really appreciate and value your opinion. So one of the issues that we have in our space is the ethics of using AI. So do we pawn it off as our own? Do we, even if we tweak it? So I'm curious to know, how are you using it? Are you using it and then tweaking it your own? Are you telling clients that, hey, we did this with AI? Are you keeping that to yourself? What are you doing on this front?
We have a proprietary walled garden AI platform that we use at our agency. We're very fortunate we're part of a agency network of other small to mid-sized independent agencies, and this is a perk that we get. We have this. So for us, that's a great advantage because we're not, uploading client problems, agency secrets, etc., into public chat GPT type of forum. But what we feel is we do want to be very transparent about it with our clients and in fact be proud. And it's part of our value proposition is that we are using the latest, greatest technology that changes and gets better every day. Certainly that's the case with AI, but we're doing it in a smart way that's protected, it's secure. And then we talk them through how we're using it, how it impacts the work that we do for their brand and for their business. Clients tend to say, okay, that's great, I didn't even know that that was possible. So I think the first conversation with clients about AI is often, it's quite scary for them because their boards and their CIO and their CFO just don't want to have anything to do with it because they see a lawsuit coming. But if you do start having the conversation early with just transparency and talk about security, I think that helps.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, transparency. We was talking about the Coke ad, which sort of started giving everyone permission to make AI ads, right? They opened Pandora's box. Although I don't know if you've seen the recent Progressive ad. You've seen that with the animals, right? In which they say at the bottom, this is AI generated for maybe to excuse how crappy it is. But that ad is a perfect example. Dustin would probably agree with me here. Perfect example of unbelievable technology and absolute lack of soul, right? That is AI. And the lack of an idea too. It's like based on an idea we've all seen 100 times from like every tire company in the world. But what hurts me about that the most is Progressive. They're one of the most prolific advertisers, and what are they known for in their advertising? Humanity, people, characters, real human, beautiful dialogue, and subtle, and not so subtle performances by people. So, I didn't answer the question, I just wanted to say that.
I'll go, cool. Elizabeth, you talked about seeing RFPs from legitimate companies posted on LinkedIn. And I think obviously it speaks to how procurement of creative services is evolving and who's maybe leadership within some of those companies. And you've all kind of spoken to the way that agencies have fractured out into different specialists or full service. And like that whole world gets pretty confusing pretty quickly, I think. How do you guys think about positioning yourselves to the new world of procurement of creative services? Cool, thank you.
Could you ask about AI again?
Oh, yeah, that's a tough question, obviously. We try we work with large enterprise companies as well that have, big procurement departments. We try to treat them like humans. We assess early on, like as we're dealing with them, how much do they know about our business? We try to find ways to help them understand what we do. We try to treat them like people. And that's actually gone pretty far because oftentimes they're not treated like that, either by their internal partners or by the people that they're dealing with. So it's tricky though, and you also need to equip your clients or your prospects with the tools they need to better explain the value. As George was saying, what am I going to get for this? So how can you help them advocate on your behalf with procurement by giving them the phrases they need to use, the things that they can say about the work that we're going to do. So treating them like people and equipping your internal advocates with the tools. They need to be able to make their case more effectively.
Thank you, Jill, for the assist with that. No, I was just thinking way back in the time machine. So I first started working with procurement on the production side. Does anyone else remember that when you had to work with procurement companies, broadcast consultants who would come in and would pick apart your bid and your estimate? Those were fun times. But even then, it was like, okay, I know I'm going to be speaking with Bob. It wasn't just some random person. I worked with Bob on a lot of jobs, and I knew he, was contracted by our client, but I always, even over the phone, you try to sit on the same side of the table as someone. You're just two people going through some numbers together on a spreadsheet. He's gonna have some very fair points. You're gonna have some fair points. Hopefully you can get together. In the end, that was always the case for me. What I'm finding now is that procurement is everywhere and everything. So it really is, for me, it's no longer about justifying, the hotel that the creatives want to stay at. But it's about just the value of your existence and what you do for a living at an agency. And again, that you can't ever win that battle or even show up prepared to fight the battle without your clients on your side and at the same side of the table.